My mother P times oshed my pregnant belly, demanded I give my $15,000 baby fund to my twin sister. I took legal action and they lost everything. My own mother punched my 7-month pregnant belly because I refused to hand over my $15,000 baby fund to my twin sister. Yeah, that sentence sounds insane even to me, but that's exactly what happened. And it all went down at what was supposed to be a beautiful baby shower. See, my twin sister Emily and I were both pregnant at the same time. Same age, same due month, same family. You'd think it would be this magical bonding experience where we grew closer and supported each other. That's what I hoped for, at least. Instead, it turned into the moment my parents showed me just how little my life and my baby's life truly meant to them. Growing up, Emily was always the golden child, the favorite, the one who got the bigger room, the nicer gifts, the better treatment. I was the other twin, the one who learned to stay quiet, work harder, and never expect much. So when I finally started building something for myself, a $15,000 baby fund that I'd scraped together working 2 jobs during pregnancy, it meant everything to me. It wasn't just money, it was security. It was proof that I could protect my child, even if nobody had ever really protected me. But to my mother, that money wasn't mine. In her mind, it was a resource she could reassign to her favorite daughter whenever she wanted. And that day, she decided Emily deserved it more. At first, it was supposed to be a normal celebration. There were pastel balloons, a decorated pergola, a table full of gifts, and guests laughing over cupcakes and punch. I tried to ignore the usual tension and just be happy for my sister. But here's where things start to twist. One conversation about family helping family turned into a demand. That demand turned into an argument. And that argument ended with me in the pool, unconscious, while my own parents watched me sink. Let me take you back to the start of that day, because on the surface, it really did look perfect. Emily's backyard was straight out of a Pinterest board. There were white chairs lined up in neat rows, pink and gold decorations everywhere, and a big welcome baby banner hanging over the pergola. Tables were covered with neatly wrapped gifts, tiny onesies, stuffed animals, and enough baby gear to start a small store. Music was playing softly. People were chatting, and for a moment, it almost felt normal. I'd actually been looking forward to it. Despite everything, the favoritism, the constant comparisons, I still wanted my sister to have a nice day. We were both 7 months pregnant, both swollen ankles and weird cravings, both counting down the weeks. A part of me thought, maybe this can be a moment where we're just 2 sisters sharing the same experience. I wore a simple pale blue dress I'd picked carefully that morning. It wasn't expensive, but it made me feel pretty and confident with my bump. I remember putting a hand on my belly in the mirror and saying softly, "We're going to get through all of this. I promise." That $15,000 sitting in my savings account was a big part of that promise. It came from months of double shifts at the hospital where I worked as a medical records clerk, plus late nights doing freelance data entry until my eyes burned. My husband James works construction, steady but modest income, and we'd agreed that building a safety net for our baby was non-negotiable. Meanwhile, Emily's life looked very different. Her husband Kevin worked in IT and had recently been laid off, but not in a "we're going to be homeless" kind of way. He'd gotten a generous severance package, and they lived in a fully paid-off house his parents had gifted them as a wedding present. At the shower, Emily floated around in a designer maternity dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget, laughing with her friends and showing off the 3 high-end strollers she'd already been gifted. I noticed the difference, of course. I always did. But I tried to swallow it down, like I had my whole life. I told myself, it's fine, different paths. Focus on your baby. I was standing near the gift table, watching Emily unwrap yet another expensive stroller from one of Kevin's friends, when I saw my mother walking toward me. That walk alone made my stomach tighten. It was that determined, clipped stride I'd seen 1,000 times before, the one that usually meant, "I've decided something, and you're going to fall in line." She stopped right in front of me, not bothering with small talk. "We need to discuss your savings," she said, loud enough for people nearby to hear. I instantly knew what she meant. The $15,000. The fund James and I had built for hospital bills, baby supplies, childcare, emergencies, all the unglamorous, real-life stuff that comes with bringing a human into the world. That money is for my baby, I replied calmly, trying to keep my voice even so it wouldn't shake. It's for our future. Her face hardened. She called it hoarding, like I was stockpiling cash out of greed instead of survival. She said Emily needed it more, that Kevin losing his job had been so stressful, and that as a sister, as family, I should step up and help. I glanced over at Emily, still laughing, still surrounded by gifts, still living in a house bought outright, with a severance package in the bank. Meanwhile, James and I were renting a one-bedroom apartment, planning to turn our tiny living room into a nursery. I'm sorry Kevin lost his job, I told my mom, but that doesn't change my obligation to my own child. Her eyes flashed with anger, and in that moment, I felt years of pent-up resentment meeting her need for control. At first, everything seemed like just another argument we'd had 100 times before. But then she stepped closer. Her voice got louder, and the word she chose next would change everything. Selfish. That one word hit harder than a slap. Selfish. The way she spat it out, like it was poison. Like I was some kind of monster for wanting to keep money I had worked myself half-broken to earn. You have always been selfish, she hissed, loud enough that conversations around us started to quiet down. Your sister is under so much stress, and you can't even help your own family? I could feel people turning to look. My heart pounded. My palms were sweaty, and that old familiar anxiety crept up my spine. This was the script I knew too well. Mom attacks, I back down, she gets what she wants. But this time, it wasn't just about me. It was about my baby. That money is for my baby's future, I said. A little stronger this time. Almost without thinking, my hands moved to cover my belly. I'm not discussing this any further. Her cheeks flushed red. How dare you speak to me like that at your sister's celebration? She stepped closer, invading my space. After everything we've done for you, this is the gratitude we get? You're an ungrateful, selfish brat. You only ever think about yourself. Something snapped inside me. 26 years of being second best, of being told to sacrifice, of watching Emily get the best of everything while I learned to live off leftovers. I remembered her bigger bedroom, her car at 16 while I took the bus, her full college tuition while I juggled classes and work at community college. Every memory piled up in my chest at once. No, I said firmly, louder than I'd ever dared to before. I'm not giving her my money. If you're so concerned about Emily, find another way to help her. But this is for my baby. For a split second, there was silence. My mother's eyes went cold in a way I'd never seen before. She'd slapped me in the past during arguments, sure. But what she did next didn't feel like anger getting out of hand. It felt deliberate. Before I could step back, her fist shot forward and connected directly with my stomach. The pain was white-hot and immediate. I felt something rupture inside me, followed by a sudden gush of fluid between my legs. It wasn't like the descriptions I'd read in pregnancy books. This wasn't just my water breaking. There was a pinkish tint and a deep, twisting pain wrapped around my abdomen like a vice. My knees buckled. I staggered backward, reaching out desperately for something to grab, but there was only air behind me. Then, in an instant, there was water. The cold of the pool shocked my entire body. I went under, disoriented, my lungs burning as I tried to figure out which way was up. I kicked, panicked, trying to get to the surface, but another brutal contraction tore through me, stealing my breath and making my vision blur. I managed to float to the top, face up, barely conscious. The world above me looked hazy, like I was watching it through fogged glass. I heard voices, laughter, and then I heard it, my father's voice, calm and cruel. Let her float there and think about her selfishness. Emily's giggle followed. Maybe now she'll learn to share. Nobody jumped in. Nobody screamed for help. Nobody rushed to pull me out. All those people, all those witnesses, and not one of my family members moved. The water around me felt thick, heavy. My limbs were getting weaker. The pain in my belly pulsed in slow, terrifying waves. I tried to call out, but only bubbles escaped my lips. Eventually, the sky above me started to fade at the edges, and everything slipped into darkness. The next thing I remember is a voice. distant and panicked, echoing somewhere above me. Then air hit my lungs in a violent rush as someone dragged me out of the water. I coughed, choking, my body limp on the cold concrete. My vision blurred again, but this time I saw a woman leaning over me, one of Emily's friends from yoga class. "Don't move," she said, her voice shaky. "Someone called 911. Just stay with me." My hands shot to my belly on instinct. The roundness felt wrong, softer, off. Pain exploded through me, and the scream that tore out of my throat didn't even sound human. "My baby," I sobbed. "Please, my baby." And as I lay there, soaked, bleeding, and half-conscious, I could still see them. My mother, my father, Emily, standing near the pergola, near the pile of gifts, watching, not helping, like I was nothing more than an interruption to their party. Everything after that blurred into a chaotic mix of pain, voices, and flashing lights. The yoga friend I later learned her name was Rachel tried her best to keep me calm. Her hands trembled as she pressed a cloth against my abdomen, trying to slow the bleeding. Blood mixed with pool water soaking through the pale blue dress I had been so proud to wear that morning. I could feel the cold concrete under my back, the hot sun on my face, and the crushing fear that something terrible was happening inside me. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Someone shouted instructions. People moved around us, but it all felt far away, like I was underwater again. I heard snippets of Rachel's voice as she talked to the 911 operator, her words shaking as she explained that a pregnant woman had been knocked into a pool and left there unconscious. When the paramedics arrived, everything sped up and slowed down at the same time. They lifted me onto a stretcher, strapped me down, and started asking questions I could barely process. "How far along are you? Any previous complications? Can you rate your pain?" One of the paramedics checked my vitals and frowned. 12 minutes, he muttered to Rachel. "You're sure?" She shook her head quickly, panicking. "Not all under," she said. She floated face up at first. I thought someone would help. I kept waiting. After a while, she started sinking more, and I couldn't watch anymore. I pulled her out as soon as I could. They loaded me into the ambulance, and the doors slammed shut. Inside, monitors beeped, and oxygen filled my nose. They strapped a belt across my belly, and the rapid, whooshing sound of my baby's heartbeat filled the small space. That sound broke me. I started sobbing in relief and fear at the same time. "Stay with us," the female paramedic said gently, squeezing my hand. "Your baby is still fighting. You've got to fight too, okay?" Another contraction ripped through me, and I cried out. The paramedics exchanged worried looks as they checked the readouts and adjusted the IV. Through the small back window, I could see Emily's house shrinking into the distance. No one had come running after us. No one had asked which hospital we were going to. As far as I knew, my family had gone right back to cake and punch. When we got to the hospital, the fluorescent lights were blinding. Nurses and doctors swarmed around me, asking more questions, moving me from the stretcher to a hospital bed, checking the baby again. The word abruption floated through the air, followed by words like emergency and C-section. Someone must have called James, because about 20 minutes later, he burst into the room, still in his work clothes, face pale and eyes wide. He rushed to my side and grabbed my hand. "What happened?" he demanded, looking from me to the staff. "They said she nearly drowned." "How?" I tried to explain between contractions, choking on the words. "My mother, she punched me. I fell into the pool. They just watched." I watched his face shift from confusion to disbelief to pure, simmering rage. His jaw clenched, his hands shook, and for a second, I thought he might walk out just to go confront them. Instead, he stayed and squeezed my hand even tighter. "They did this to you?" he asked quietly, his voice low and dangerous. "Your own family?" Before I could answer, they started prepping me for surgery. A nurse handed James scrubs and told him he could come into the operating room once he changed. They wheeled me down a hallway, bright lights passing overhead like scenes in a movie. I noticed 2 police officers standing near the nurse's station, watching. One of them, a woman with kind eyes, stepped up beside my gurney. "Ma'am, we're going to need to ask you some questions about what happened," she said gently. "But that can wait until after surgery. Right now, you focus on your baby, all right?" I nodded weakly as they pushed me into the operating room. My world shrank to the blue curtain they draped across my chest, the tugging sensations in my abdomen, and James's hand gripping mine by my head. My body felt numb from the anesthesia, but my mind was racing. Then, after what felt like forever, I heard it. A tiny, fragile, but absolutely perfect cry. 4 pounds, 7 ounces, the doctor announced. She's small, but she's breathing on her own. In that instant, everything else dropped away. My mother's punch, the pool, the betrayal. All I could focus on was that sound. My daughter's first cry. They brought her to me for just a moment, before taking her to the NICU. She was so tiny, her skin reddish and wrinkled, wires and monitors already waiting for her. But her eyes opened for a second, and it felt like she looked straight into mine, as if to say, "I'm here. We made it." Then they whisked her away, and the doctors went back to repairing the damage inside me. While they worked, I could hear bits of conversation, words like severe abruption, massive trauma, and lucky they got her out in time. One of them even said that if I'd stayed in that pool just a few more minutes, my baby might not have survived. The thought made my chest tighten, all because my mother wanted to punish me for saying no. After surgery, they moved me to recovery. Exhaustion crashed over me, but my mind wouldn't stop replaying everything. The punch, the fall, the silence around the pool, my father's voice, Emily's laugh. I kept thinking, these are the people who raised me. A little while later, the same female police officer from before came into my room with a male officer carrying a notepad. She introduced herself as Officer Clara Thompson and her partner as Officer Mark Roberts. They pulled up chairs next to my bed. "We need to document what happened at the baby shower," Officer Thompson said gently. "Rachel Adams, the woman who pulled you from the pool, has already given a statement, and some other guests have talked to us as well. But we need to hear everything from you." So I told them. I started with my mother demanding my $15,000 baby fund, how she called it hoarding, how she insisted Emily needed it more. I explained how I refused, how I finally set a boundary after years of being pushed around. Then I described the punch, the gush of fluid, the fall into the pool, and the awful decision my family made to just stand there and watch. Officer Roberts wrote quickly, his expression growing darker with every detail. When I repeated my father's words, "Let her float there and think about her selfishness," and Emily's, "Maybe now she'll learn to share," they both exchanged a look. "Mrs. Patterson," Officer Thompson said carefully, "what you're describing isn't just a family argument. This is assault on a pregnant woman. Given the circumstances, it could qualify as assault with a deadly weapon. And the fact that your father and sister interfered with rescuing you could fall under reckless endangerment or even attempted murder. This is extremely serious." Hearing those words out loud made my stomach twist. I knew what they'd done was horrible, but putting legal terms to it made it feel even more real. My own mother, my father, my twin sister, the 3 people who should have been my safety net, had become the ones I needed protection from. They asked for my permission to access my medical records and any security footage from the house. That's when I remembered Emily's cameras. She'd had them installed for security months earlier. If any of them caught what happened, there would be undeniable proof. I agreed to everything. At that point, something inside me had shifted. I wasn't just a scared daughter anymore. I was a mother, and someone had tried to hurt my child. The days that followed were a strange mix of quiet hospital routines and explosive consequences unfolding outside those walls. In the NICU, my daughter Lily fought like a tiny warrior. James told me he'd given the name when I was still recovering from surgery, but it was the one we'd chosen together months earlier, so it felt right. She was small, hooked up to tubes and monitors, but the nurses kept using words like stable and strong. Every visit, I'd sit next to her incubator, slip my hand through the opening, and rest a finger gently on her palm. When she curled her little hand around mine, it felt like the whole world narrowed down to just the 2 of us. The hospital assigned a social worker named Kate to check on me. She had kind eyes and a calm voice. She reminded me that what happened was not my fault, that setting a financial boundary didn't justify violence. Her words helped, even if the guilt crept in sometimes, that nagging voice asking if I should have just given the money to avoid all this. Meanwhile, James contacted a lawyer who specialized in personal injury and family cases. She reviewed the medical reports, witness statements, and what evidence had already surfaced. From what she saw, she said we had a very strong case, not just criminally, but civilly too. Long-term damages, trauma, Lily's premature birth, my injuries. She wanted to go after everything. My phone buzzed constantly with calls and messages from my parents and Emily. I blocked their numbers. Whatever family had meant before, it meant something very different now. Lying in that hospital bed at night, I started to see my entire childhood with new eyes. The $15,000 my mother tried to take wasn't just about money, it was about control, the same control she'd used my whole life. When I was a kid, every favor had strings. Every gift was a reminder that I owed them. Saying no at that baby shower wasn't just about a savings account. It was the first time I had ever really chosen myself over their expectations. The guilt still tried to creep in. Part of me wondered if I could have phrased things softer, or agreed to help a little, just to keep the peace. But then I would look at Lily in the NICU, remember how close I came to losing her, and the guilt turned into something else: anger, clarity, and finally, resolve. In the end, I lost the family I grew up with, but I protected the family I'm building now. My mother's punch didn't just shatter our relationship, it exposed the truth of who they really were. If you were in my place, would you forgive them or walk away forever? If this story hit a nerve or made you feel something, do me a favor. Hit like so more people can find it, and subscribe if you want more real Reddit stories just like this. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my place?